The starship did not arrive with a flash of light or a boom of thunder. It simply appeared, a smooth teardrop of polished silver larger than a mountain, hanging in silent orbit high above the blue curve of Earth. On the ground, in a bunker deep beneath the Swiss Alps, June watched the main screen. He was a man in his 40s, with kind eyes that now held a deep tiredness. For 12 months, he had led the world's team of linguists, scientists, and diplomats in a single project, preparing for first contact. Now, the moment was here. "Signal is clean. Translation matrix is holding," said a technician, her voice tight with excitement. June nodded. "Open the channel. Global broadcast. It's time to say hello." Across the planet, every screen, every phone, every public display showed the same image. The strange, beautiful ship against the black of space. Then, a face appeared. It was not a human face. It was elegant, with skin the color of a dove's feather and large, calm eyes that held no pupil. This was Ambassador Clarn of the Galactic Concordance. The voice that came through was smooth, translated perfectly by the software. "People of Earth, we greet you. We have watched your world for some time. We see your energy, your many cultures, your rapid steps into the dark. The Galactic Concordance, an alliance of 17 enlightened species, now extends to you an invitation. We offer you a place among the stars." A cheer went up in the bunker. People hugged. June allowed himself a small, real smile. This was the dream. This was everything they had hoped for. The next weeks were a whirlwind. June, as the chief human liaison, was brought to a stunning space station that circled a distant star. It was a place of impossible beauty, with gardens under glass domes and buildings that seemed made of light. Representatives from other species walked by, some tall and thin, others with more limbs, all moving with a quiet peace. There was no noise, no rush, no argument. It was perfect. Ambassador Clarn was a gracious host. They showed June wonders: medicine that could cure any human illness, engines that could cross the galaxy in the blink of an eye, energy drawn from the fabric of space itself. "Our alliance is built on harmony, June," Clarn explained as they walked through a silent garden. "For thousands of years, we have removed the causes of conflict. We have created a paradise of cooperation." "It is breathtaking," June said honestly, thinking of Earth's crowded, noisy, arguing, vibrant cities. "We have much to learn. And we are ready to teach," Clarn said, their large eyes blinking slowly. "All we ask in return is commitment to the path of harmony." Then came the day of the formal offer. In a vast circular chamber, representatives of the 17 species sat in quiet dignity. June stood alone in the center, a small figure from a young world. Clarn addressed him and, by broadcast, all of humanity. "The Galactic Concordance formally invites humanity to join us under the integration protocol. This is a structured process to ensure a smooth transition to galactic society and lasting peace." A holographic display lit up. It showed a timeline. It showed Earth receiving technology step by step. It showed humans visiting other worlds. It was everything June's team had prayed for. Then the timeline continued. It showed cultural exchange programs. It showed modifications to education systems to emphasize galactic history and concordance philosophy. June's smile began to fade. He leaned forward, studying the finer text at the bottom of the display. "What are these?" he asked, pointing to a series of biological terms. "Ah," Clarn said, as if explaining something simple to a child. "The final, beautiful step. To ensure true and lasting harmony, and to ease your species' integration, we provide gentle biological guidance. We call them harmony genes. They are a simple, painless treatment. They help soften the more difficult aspects of your nature. The intense territorialism, the tribal aggression, the volatile emotional bonds that lead to such pain and conflict. We free you from them." The chamber was utterly silent. The alien faces were serene, expectant. June felt a coldness settle in his stomach. "You want to change what we are. To help you become what you can be," Clarn corrected gently. "Look at your history. It is a story of war, of one group fighting another for land, for ideas, for simple difference. This pain ends now. You will join a family where such impulses are forgotten. You will finally know true peace. On the screen, a detailed schematic appeared. It showed a human brain. Arrows pointed to areas linked to aggression, to deep familial loyalty, to competitive drive. The harmony genes would gently suppress these functions. June thought of his daughter's fierce, competitive spirit in her soccer games. He thought of the loud, passionate debates in his own family over dinner. He thought of the monument in Seoul for those who fought for freedom, their loyalty to their people carved in stone. Was all that just a flaw to be removed? This is a great gift, June, Clarn continued. Many species before you have accepted it with gratitude. They are now peaceful, happy, and unified members of our community. Their ancient, violent histories are just that, history. They have moved beyond them. June looked from the hologram to the circle of alien faces. They all nodded, a uniform gesture of agreement. In that moment, he understood. They weren't offering a partnership. They were offering a gentle, kind, and polite erasure. They saw humanity as a sick child that needed to be cured before it could sit at the adult table. He had been authorized by Earth's leaders to accept an offer of alliance. But this was something else entirely. Ambassador Clarn, June said, his voice calm but firm in the vast quiet chamber. This is a profound offer. Humanity will need time to consider it. A ripple went through the assembled delegates. It was the first hint of surprise June had seen in them. Clarn's head tilted. Consider? Of course. But we trust you see the obvious benefits. There is no other logical path. Return to your world. Explain the gift. We await your joyful acceptance. The transmission ended. Back in the bunker on Earth, the celebration had died. The screens now showed the detailed documents of the integration protocol. Across the planet, in every language, people were reading the same thing. The offer was not just for friendship. It was for a fundamental change to the human soul. June stared at the image of Earth on his private screen, a brilliant blue and white marble in the dark. He felt the weight of the stars on his shoulders. He had to go home and tell his species that the galaxy thought they were broken, and that they had to decide if they agreed. The quiet, perfect peace of the Concordance station felt, for the first time, like the deepest silence before a storm. The shuttle ride back to Earth was the longest of June's life. Through the small window, the planet grew from a marble to a world, its clouds and continents vivid and real. He saw the electric glow of cities on the night side, the tangled lines of human civilization. He thought of the silent, clean station of the Concordance and felt a sudden, fierce love for the messy light below. He was met not with a parade, but with a silent, armored convoy. The world was holding its breath. He was taken directly to a nondescript building in Geneva. Inside, in a secure room, sat Secretary General Juan. The man looked older than he had a month ago. "Tell me everything," Juan said. His voice was a dry leaf. June laid it out. The wonders, the perfect peace, the harmony genes, the biological adjustments, the erasure of troublesome human traits. He did not sugarcoat it. Juan listened, his hands steepled. When June finished, the old man simply asked, "Your recommendation?" June was silent for a full minute. "They are not evil," he said finally. "They believe truly and completely that they are saving us from ourselves. They see our history as a sickness. Their offer is an act of kindness, in their eyes." "But," Juan prompted. "But it is not an alliance," June said, his voice gaining strength. "It is a surrender. They do not want partners. They want patients who have been cured. They want to make us quiet." A screen on the wall flickered to life. It was split into dozens of boxes, showing leaders from across the globe. The emergency session of the General Assembly had begun, and it was chaos. A European chancellor spoke first, her face pale. The medical technology alone could save millions. To refuse over some philosophical pride is irresponsible. A representative from a nation that had known recent war shot back, his voice trembling. "They want to cut the fight out of us. What happens when the next threat comes? and we have no fight left. An economist argued for acceptance. Their energy systems would end poverty overnight. We would leap forward 1,000 years. A historian from Kenya countered, her eyes blazing on the screen. They call our history a flaw. Our entire story, our art born from struggle, our music born from sorrow and joy, they call it a symptom. If we erase the cause of our pain, do we erase ourselves? The debate raged for days. It spilled from the secure rooms onto the streets and the global networks. People argued in cafes and on rooftops. Families fought over dinner tables. Some saw salvation. Others saw the softest, most polite end of the world. June did not sleep. He moved from briefing to briefing, a ghost in the halls of power. He saw the temptation in the eyes of the leaders, the hunger for the easy answer, for the painless fix to every human problem that in a lab deep under the Ural Mountains. A different kind of work was happening. Mira, the lead engineer, had been given a single task: analyze everything. Not the Concordance's promises, but their facts, their technology, their history. Her team was made of the world's best and most skeptical minds. They pored over the data June had brought back. They studied the schematics of the Concordance ships, their energy signatures, their communication logs. Mira, her hair tied back in a messy bun, stared at a graph on her main screen. It showed the technological progression of Concordance member species. "Look at this," she said to her deputy. "Every single one. A steep, natural curve of development, then a flat line. The moment they joined the Concordance, innovation stops. It becomes gentle refinement. No breakthroughs, no revolutions." "They achieved perfection," the deputy suggested. "Or they lost the need to struggle," Mira murmured. "The need to overcome." She dug deeper. She requested cultural data under the guise of integration preparation. The Concordance happily provided sanitized versions of member species' histories. They were dry, boring tales of peaceful progression. But Mira was an engineer. She looked for the cracks, the seams. She used linguistic algorithms to analyze older records, looking for emotional context that might have been scrubbed. She found traces, faint echoes of words that meant victory and defeat in ancient texts, concepts that had no translation in modern Concordance language. She found biological records showing minor, but universal, genetic alterations in every member species post-integration. The same pattern, the suppression of specific neurochemical pathways. Late one night, she called June on a secure line. His face on her screen was exhausted. "June, they didn't join a club," she said, her voice quiet but intense. "They were sterilized, culturally and biologically. Every species that said yes is now a peaceful, happy, stagnant part of a whole. They have no edge, no individuality. They gave it up for safety." June rubbed his eyes. "Are you sure?" "I am," Mira said. "Their offer isn't malicious. It's ecological. They are gardeners pruning a wild plant to fit their tidy flower bed. They see us as a weed, a beautiful, dangerous weed." She sent her report. It landed in the inboxes of every world leader. It was a cold, technical document, but its conclusion was a thunderclap. The Concordance did not integrate difference. It eliminated it. The public debate changed. It was no longer just about pride or medicine. It was about the future. It was about children. A simple video clip went viral. A young father in Busan sat with his baby daughter on his lap. He spoke directly to the camera, his words clumsy but true. "The aliens say she has too much fire. They say her cry is too loud. Her laugh is too wild. Her love will be too painful. They want to make her calm. I look at her, and I do not see something that needs to be fixed. I see my daughter." That clip did more than 1,000 speeches. People began to understand. The offer was not for them. It was for the humans who would come after. A future of placid, quiet people who would never write an angry poem, never fall in a love so deep it hurt, never fight for something they believed. In his office, Secretary General Huan watched the clip. He looked at a photo on his desk of his own grandchildren, their faces bright with impossible energy. He then looked at the final vote tally from the General Assembly Advisory Panel. It was not unanimous. It was not even close. But it was clear. He called June. The Concordance has asked for our answer. They expect it in 24 hours.
June nodded.
What is the answer, sir? Juan looked old and tired and very, very firm. We will give them one. You will deliver it. Tell them the human family needs to talk. The chamber was not the grand hall of the Concordance station. It was the General Assembly Hall in New York. The room was packed. Every seat was filled with representatives from every nation. The air was thick and warm, smelling of old wood, anxiety, and human sweat. The Great Seal of the United Nations stood as a silent witness. Secretary General Juan stood at the simple wooden podium. He looked small under the high ceiling. There were no holograms here, no alien technology, just a microphone and a single camera, its red light glowing like a tiny, watchful eye. The feed was going to every screen on Earth, and it was being transmitted on the frequency the Concordance had given them. Behind Juan, on a smaller seat, sat June. He felt the weight of every gaze. He saw faces marked by hope, fear, anger, and deep sorrow. This was not a celebration. It was a funeral or perhaps a birth. No one was sure which. Juan did not smile. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing in the quiet. Ambassador Clarn, representatives of the Galactic Concordance, people of Earth. His voice was rough, but it did not shake. 1 month ago you came to us. You offered a hand in friendship. You showed us wonders beyond our imagination. For this glimpse of a peaceful galaxy, we thank you. He paused, looking down at his notes, but he did not read them. You also offered us a diagnosis. You looked at our history, at the story of our species, and you saw a sickness. You saw conflict, division, pain, and ambition. You saw these things as flaws to be corrected. You offered us a cure, the integration protocol, the harmony genes. A low murmur moved through the room. Juan waited for it to settle. For weeks we have debated this. We have argued, we have cried, we have studied. We have looked into our own hearts and into the future you promise. It is a future of perfect peace, of no war, no hatred, no deep, troubling passion. It is a beautiful dream. He took a slow breath, his knuckles white on the sides of the podium. But we have come to understand something. To accept your cure, we must accept that we are sick. We must look at the whole of humanity, at our art born from suffering, our compassion born from empathy for pain, our courage born from fear, our love that is so deep it sometimes breaks us, and call it a disease. We must agree that the best parts of us are mistakes. June watched the faces in the crowd. He saw a woman from a small island nation wiping her eyes. He saw an old soldier sitting straight, his jaw tight. We have examined the history of your concordance. Juan continued, his voice growing stronger. We see the peace. We also see what is missing. We see no new songs that shake the stars. We see no stories of great sacrifice for a comrade. We see no debates that forge new truths in fire. You have solved the problem of conflict by removing the things we fight for. He looked directly into the camera now, as if speaking to Clarn personally. You offered to change us to fit your peaceful galaxy. But peace is not the only worthy thing. Our capacity for war comes from the same place as our capacity for loyalty, for protecting our families, for refusing to bow to tyranny. You cannot take the darkness without also killing the light. They are the same root. The hall was utterly silent. The entire world seemed to be holding its breath. So, Juan said the word final in the quiet. With humility, but with one voice, the human family thanks you for your generous offer. However, we cannot surrender our right to be ourselves. We cannot give away our past, however messy, or our potential, however dangerous. We must decline the integration protocol. For a second, there was nothing. Then a sound rose. It was not a cheer. It was a deep, collective exhale from thousands of people. A sigh that held grief and relief and terrifying resolve. Some representatives put their heads in their hands. Others reached out to grip their neighbors' arms. There were no flags waved. This was not a victory. It was a choice. June felt a chill. It was done. They had said no. On the large screen at the front of the hall, which had been dark, a connection flickered to life. It was the circular chamber of the Concordance. Ambassador Clarn sat surrounded by the other species representatives. Their perfect, serene faces were frozen in what June could only read as pure, incomprehensible shock. The silence from their end was absolute and deafening. Clarn finally leaned forward. Their translated voice filled the human hall, smooth as ever, but empty of its usual warmth. It was cold. You decline. It was not a question. It was a statement of impossible fact. Juan nodded. We do. We wish for peaceful relations. We wish for trade, for cultural exchange, for friendship. But we will do so as ourselves, not as a quieter version. Clarn's large eyes blinked once. Slowly, the other delegates began to murmur among themselves, a first sign of disorder June had ever seen from them. This is irrational, Clarn stated. This is the logic of the flaw itself. Your aggression, your tribal pride is speaking. You are choosing your sickness over health. You are choosing a future of certain pain over guaranteed peace. We are choosing our future, Juan replied, his old voice firm. For better or worse. Understand the consequence, Clarn said, the chill deepening. The Galactic Concordance cannot allow a volatile, aggressive species to remain unchecked on the galactic stage. Your refusal of harmony is, by definition, a declaration of disharmony. A containment protocol will be enacted immediately. Your system will be quarantined. All trade, all travel, all communication will be monitored and restricted. You will be left alone with your choice. The threat hung in the air. Isolation. A cage of silence. We understand, said Juan. His shoulders did not slump. We will endure. Clarn stared, as if looking at an animal that had suddenly spoken in riddles. The transmission cut off. The screen went black. The silence in the General Assembly Hall was heavier than before. The representatives looked at Juan, at June, at each other. The fear was back, sharp and real. Juan turned to face them. He looked very tired, but his eyes were clear. They believe they are putting us in timeout, he said, his voice carrying without the microphone now. They believe we will sit in the corner until we agree to be good. They do not understand. He looked out at the sea of faces from every corner of the world. They have never met a species that heard the word no and decided to build a door. The silence from the stars was the first thing everyone noticed. The open channels the Concordance had used, full of peaceful music and gentle greetings, went dead. The deep space telescopes watched as sleek, silent vessels took up positions far beyond the orbit of Pluto. They did not approach. They did not speak. They simply formed a perfect, distant ring around the entire solar system. A fence. On Earth, the initial shock was a physical thing. Markets trembled. There were protests in some cities demanding the decision be reversed. There were cries of despair. The Concordance had promised so much, and now they had taken even the sky. But something else happened, too. In the city where June was, he walked through streets that were quieter, but not panicked. People looked at their phones, at the news of the quarantine, and then they looked at each other. The old arguments, the ones about borders, about resources, about ideology, seemed to fade, like colors washed out by a brighter, harsher light that he received his new orders. He was to return to the Concordance station as the human liaison in containment. It was a polite title for a prisoner ambassador. His job was to be a channel, to listen, and to report the galaxy's displeasure back to Earth. It was a lonely duty. Before he left, he went to see Mira. Her lab was no longer just in the Urals. It had become the nerve center of the newly formed Planetary Defense Directorate, and it had spread, linking facilities across the globe. The room hummed with a tense energy that was the opposite of the Concordance's peace. Mira looked up from a 3D model of the solar system, her eyes red from lack of sleep but fiercely alert. You're going back out there. To the quiet room, he nodded. You're building the lock for our door. We're building a understanding, she corrected, pointing at the hologram. Tiny markers glowed in the asteroid belt, around Mars, near Earth. They think containment will make us afraid. They think fear will make us compliant. They are wrong. Fear is a data point. It tells you what to prepare for. She explained, her words quick and clear. The Concordance ships were powerful, but their tactics were predictable, based on a doctrine of overwhelming peace. They expected either surrender or a direct, angry attack. They did not expect ingenuity. We are not building a fleet to fight them, June, she said. We are building a system to survive them, to make any move into our home too painful, too complicated, for their peaceful minds to accept. We are using our flaws, our cunning, our stubbornness, our ability to think in ways they find irrational. June saw it then. The markers weren't warships. They were other things. Refitted mining drones, repurposed communication satellites, hidden bases on lifeless rocks, a network of eyes and tools, not swords. What's the plan, Mira? He asked softly. The plan, she said, is to be a rock in their perfect stream, to be so stubborn, so quietly defiant, that they have to either ignore us forever or get their hands dirty. And they hate getting dirty. When June's shuttle passed through the invisible quarantine boundary, he felt a slight tingle. A scanner. They were watching. He arrived at the station. It was the same as before. Beautiful, silent, clean. But the feeling was different. The few aliens he passed did not nod in greeting. Their eyes slid away from him. He was no longer a hopeful applicant. He was a problem. Ambassador Clarn summoned him. The office was as serene as ever. Clarn did not offer a seat. The containment is in effect, Clarn stated. Your species now has the solitude it chose. Use this time to reflect. When you are ready to accept the protocol, the offer may still be open. Though the gene adjustments may need to be more comprehensive after this display. June kept his face still. We are reflecting. Thank you for the opportunity. Clarn seemed annoyed by his calm. Your isolation is total. Do not attempt to send ships beyond your system. Do not attempt aggressive scans. You are being monitored. Understood, June said. He was a diplomat. His weapon was words, and now silence. Back on Earth, the real work began. And it was not led by generals. It was led by engineers like Mira, by programmers, by asteroid miners, by deep space construction crews. A global resource network, once a dream, was forged in weeks. Materials were sent where they were needed, not where they earned the most money. Food was shared. Power grids were linked. The project was not called a war fleet. It was called the Gardner Initiative. Private joke from Mira. If they see us as weeds, she had said, then let us grow deep, strong roots they cannot easily pull. In shipyards orbiting Earth and the Moon, new vessels were built. They were not beautiful. They were functional, blocky, and tough. The first to be completed was the Vigil. Its captain was Su Min, a former pilot for a lunar mining corp. Her ship was not fast, and its weapons were light. But its engines were efficient, its hull was reinforced, and its sensors were the best humanity could make. This mission was simple: watch, patrol the inner system, map the quarantine boundary, be the human eye in the dark. Su Min stood on her new bridge, her crew a mix of faces from every continent. She addressed them on the intercom. They have put a fence around our home. Our job is to learn the fence. Every post, every wire. We do not provoke. We observe. We are the proof that we are still here, and we are still looking out. As the Vigil began its first long, looping patrol, Myra's Gardner systems came online, one by one. They were passive, hidden. Gravitic sensors buried in asteroids. Communication relays disguised as debris. It was a web of consciousness spun around the inner planets. The Galactic Concordance watched, too. Their reports back to their councils were confident. The humans were busy, yes. They showed a frustrating unity. But their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. They were building defenses, but defenses meant for a war of the past. The Concordance saw no threat, only a stubborn child reinforcing its sandcastle before the inevitable tide. They waited for the break. For the human unity to fracture under stress, for the old divisions to reappear, for the desperate plea to return. It did not come. Instead, the concordant sensors began picking up strange, low-level signals from the asteroid belt. Not weapons fire, not engines. It was more like chatter, like the sound of tools. And from the planet itself, the open broadcast channel the humans maintained showed not despair, but 1,000 stories of adaptation, of work, of quiet determination. June, in his quiet room on the alien station, watched these human broadcasts. He saw the Vigil's crew celebrating a birthday in zero gravity. He saw Mira, in a rare interview, calmly explaining asteroid redirection for resource gathering. He saw children sending drawings of the Vigil to the crew. He said nothing to Klarn. But sometimes, when he passed the ambassador in the hall, he allowed himself a very small, very human smile. They had said humanity would break. They had instead picked up their tools. The silence from the stars was no longer a threat. It was a canvas, and humanity, with all its flawed, brilliant, stubborn noise, had begun to paint. The silence stretched into months. For June, on the Concordant station, it was a strange kind of exile. He was treated with cold, perfect politeness. He had access to information, but it was like drinking from a still pond, clear, but with no life beneath the surface. He studied their laws, their history, looking for a crack in their peaceful logic. On Earth, the silence was filled with the noise of work. The Gardner Initiative was not a single weapon. It was 1,000 small, clever things. Mira rarely slept. Her world was a stream of data from hidden sensors, engineering reports, and tactical simulations. The Concordance fleet, the Ring of Harmony, hung at the edge of the solar system. It was a display of power meant to intimidate. Mira and her team saw it as a puzzle. "We are not trying to beat them in a race," she told her tired staff, pointing to a schematic of a Concordance cruiser. It was beautiful and lethal. "We are trying to make the race pointless. Look at their design. Perfect symmetry, centralized power systems, predictable patrol patterns. They value order above all else. Our advantage is chaos, controlled chaos." Her plan was not about strength, but about friction. In workshops on Earth, the Moon, and in the asteroid belt, they built devices that were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were tools of profound annoyance. Small, stealthy drones with powerful electromagnets, designed to latch onto hulls and disrupt sensor arrays. Clouds of reflective chaff that could blind targeting systems. Gravitic projectors, crude but effective, that could create tiny, unstable pockets of warped space, like throwing a handful of gravel into a perfect clockwork. Meanwhile, Captain Sumin and the Vigil mapped the quarantine line with the care of a surveyor. They learned its rhythm. Every Concordance ship had a name, a patrol route, a pattern. The Vigil became a familiar, ignored speck on their sensors. A slow, harmless human vessel, always watching, never crossing the line. Sumin reported something interesting to Mira. The lead ship, the one that seems to be in command, is called the Judicator. His captain is by the book. He moves exactly when scheduled. He never deviates. He is the perfect Concordance officer. Mira smiled. It was a thin, sharp smile. Perfect is fragile. Remember that. Back on the station, June requested a formal meeting with Ambassador Klarn. He was granted one, a sign they still hoped for his surrender. "The containment is peaceful," Klarn said, their voice devoid of warmth. "Your species remains safe, if isolated. Have you come to convey their reconsideration?" "Not yet," June said, keeping his tone neutral. "I have come to ask about the long-term goal. If we never agree, will the Concordance just watch us forever? Or is there a point where containment becomes something else?" Klarn's large eyes blinked slowly. "The Concordance is patient. Disorder cannot be allowed to spread. If your species demonstrates a sustained threat to galactic harmony, other measures are within our laws. But it is not our preference. We are not aggressors." The word aggressors hung in the air.
June understood.
In their view, any action they took would be a peaceful response to human aggression. Even if that aggression was simply existing as they were. He reported this to Earth. The message was clear. The fence could become a wall, and then the wall could start to close in. The test came sooner than anyone expected. The Judicator, on its flawless patrol, detected an energy signature from within the asteroid belt. It was not a weapon. It was a high-powered scan, a deep, probing look directly at the Judicator's hull. To Captain Sumin, who was listening nearby in the Vigil, it was one of Myra's sensor probes, gathering final data. To the Judicator, it was a hostile act, a violation of the containment, an aggressive peek over the fence. The Judicator did not hail. It did not warn. It simply changed course, moving with smooth, silent speed from the edge of the system toward the inner planets. Its orders were clear: enforce the quarantine, demonstrate the futility of resistance, disable the source of the scan. Alarms sounded in Myra's command center. The Judicator is moving. It's crossing the line. It's heading for Belt Sensor Station Theta. She watched the blip on the screen. This was it. The first move. Not a full invasion, but a slap on the wrist. A show of force to make the unruly child behave. Myra did not hesitate. Her hands flew over her console. Activate Gardner Protocol. Stage 1. Do not fire. Just get in the way. In the asteroid belt, a dozen small, nondescript rocks suddenly sprouted maneuvering thrusters. They shifted position, not much, just enough to place themselves on the Judicator's calculated approach path. It was not a blockade. It was a clutter. The Judicator adjusted, annoyed. Its perfect course was now imperfect. Then, from the shadow of a larger asteroid, a cloud of Myra's chaff bloomed like metallic pollen. It drifted into the Judicator's path. The ship's sensors flickered, confused for a moment by the sudden noise. It slowed further on the bridge of the Judicator. Its captain, a being who had never known true conflict, felt the first stirrings of something unfamiliar: frustration. This was not a fight. It was a nuisance. He ordered a low-power energy pulse to clear the chaff. As the pulse fired, Myra's second stage activated. Small, spider-like drones, launched hours before and clinging to asteroids, fired their crude gravitic projectors. The space around the Judicator didn't explode. It wobbled. The effect was like hitting a patch of ice. The ship's stabilizers whined in protest. Its smooth flight became a clumsy drift. It was not damaged. It was not in danger. It was being made to look foolish. The Judicator's captain, now truly agitated, decided to end the game. He targeted the original sensor station, a small platform bolted to an asteroid. A single, precise beam lanced out to destroy it. That moment, the Vigil moved. Sumin brought her ship not in front of the weapon, but into the line of sight between the Judicator and the station. It was a bluff of breathtaking audacity. The Vigil's shields were weak. The beam would slice through it. The Judicator's firing computer, programmed with strict rules of engagement against non-harmful vessels, automatically aborted the shot. The ship jerked to a full stop, confused by this irrational act of self-sacrifice. A hail came through to the Judicator. It was from the Vigil. Sumin's face appeared on their screen. She looked calm. "Concordance vessel Judicator," she said, her voice clear. "You have violated the space humanity claims for its own. You have crossed the line you drew. You have fired upon our property. Withdraw immediately. This is your only warning." On the alien bridge, the captain stared. The words made no sense. A warning? From this primitive ship? After they had interfered with a concordance enforcement action? The arrogance was staggering. It was pure, unfiltered human defiance that he was about to order the Vigil's disablement when a final report came from his sensor officer. The space around them, once empty, was now registering dozens of new energy signatures. Not from ships, but from the asteroids themselves. Targeting locks. Not powerful enough to destroy his ship, but more than enough to scar its perfect hull, to blind its sensors, to make this simple mission a costly, ugly mess. The human weeds had grown thorns. The Judicator hung in the silent darkness, caught in a web it never saw being woven. Back on the Concordance station, June watched the live feed from the Vigil with a pounding heart. He saw the perfect alien ship, motionless and confused. He saw the blocky, brave shape of the Vigil holding its ground. He allowed himself a small, tight smile. The Concordance had offered them peace through silence. Humanity had chosen to speak. And their first word had been no. Their second word, it seemed, was leave. The galaxy was listening now, and for the first time it was stunned into silence. On the bridge of the Judicator, time seemed to have stopped. The captain sat in his perfect chair, his hands resting on the smooth console. Before him, the main screen showed the blocky human ship, the Vigil hanging defiantly in the void. Around them, on his tactical display, a constellation of angry red dots glowed from the asteroids, primitive weapons but numerous. His ship was not in true danger, but it was no longer clean. It was being touched by the disorder. Captain Suman's face remained on the communication screen. She did not repeat herself. She simply waited. The silence from her end was not the peaceful silence of the Concordance. It was a waiting silence, heavy and solid. The Judicator's captain ran through his protocols. The humans had not fired a single energy weapon. They had used debris, gravity distortions, and their own ship as a shield. There was no rule for this. The rulebook assumed a logical enemy, one who sought to destroy or be destroyed. It did not account for an enemy that sought to annoy, to complicate, to make a simple task shamefully difficult. He could, of course, still fire. He could destroy the Vigil and the sensor platform. But the cost? His perfect hull would be scarred by 100 small impacts from the asteroid weapons. His report would not be of a swift enforcement, but of a messy brawl with a species that fought with rocks and tricks. In the Concordance, where appearance was a form of peace, this was a kind of defeat. With a feeling that felt like a system error in his own mind, he gave the order. Disengage. Return to quarantine perimeter. The Judicator turned, its movement still graceful but now carrying the faintest hint of haste. It retreated back toward the edge of the solar system, leaving the Vigil and the cluttered battlefield behind. On the Vigil, a cheer erupted. Suman did not join it. She watched the retreating ship until it was a speck. Stand down all systems. Do not pursue. Hold position. She knew this was not a victory. It was the end of a first tiny test. The giant had stepped back, surprised by a thorn. It would now look at its foot. The data from the encounter flooded into Myra's command center. She watched the replay, analyzing every twitch of the Judicator. They hesitated, she said to her team. Their logic broke. They couldn't process a fight that wasn't about winning, but about making them not want to play. She allowed herself a single, deep breath. It had worked. The theory was sound. Humanity's weapon was not superior firepower. It was superior friction. The news spread across Earth not as a triumph, but as a proof. People saw the footage from the Vigil's cameras. The majestic alien ship, the defiant human one, the retreat. The message was clear. The fence was not a wall. Could be challenged. The spirit that had said no had just said, stop. And it had been listened to on the Concordance station. June was summoned to Ambassador Clarness' office immediately. The calm was gone. The air itself felt charged with a cold, silent anger. Clarn stood, their usually serene posture stiff. Your species has committed an act of unambiguous aggression. You attacked a Concordance vessel enforcing lawful quarantine. June had seen the feed. He kept his voice calm, diplomatic. The Judicator entered our sovereign space and fired first, Ambassador. We responded with measured, defensive actions to protect our property. We issued a warning which was obeyed. Where is the aggression? Sovereign space. Clarness' translated voice was sharp. You claim sovereignty based on what? Chaos? Trickery? You littered the zone with junk. We used available resources to defend ourselves, June corrected gently. A concept I believe you understand. The Judicator withdrew without loss of life. That sounds like a peaceful resolution to me. Clarn stared at him. June could see the confusion beneath the anger. They could not fit human actions into their boxes. Was it war? No energy weapons were used. Was it peace? No, their ship had been embarrassed. It was something else. Something new and unclean. This changes nothing, Clarn finally said, but the certainty was gone from their voice. The containment stands. Your dangerous ingenuity only proves the need for it. Then we will continue to live within it, June said, bowing slightly. As ourselves. Back on Earth, the work did not stop. It intensified. The Gardner systems had been tested. Now they were improved, expanded. New ideas flowed in from across the planet, from video game designers, from puzzle masters, from engineers who built machines for harsh environments. The human defense was becoming a collective work of art, a global brain thinking of ways to be safe without becoming what the Concordance wanted. The Concordance Council, meanwhile, was in a quiet uproar. The footage from the Judicator was played. The elegant ship, harassed by gravitational dust and metallic chaff, forced to retreat by a vessel 1/10 its size. The diplomats and commanders were not afraid. They were affronted. It was an aesthetic offense. They fight without honor, one said. They fight without clarity, corrected another, more wisely. They have turned their space into a maze of small harms. To pacify them by force would be messy, undignified. A third voice, older, spoke. They have weaponized their refusal. They have taken our concept of containment and built a prison they are willing to live inside, and have made the walls sharp. To touch them is to be bled, not by swords, but by a million paper cuts. The debate was no longer about if humanity was dangerous. It was about what kind of danger they represented. They were not a military threat. They were a philosophical threat. A species that looked at perfect peace and called it a cage. A species that would rather live in a messy, difficult, defiant freedom. They decided on a new approach. Not an attack, but a demonstration. A show of such overwhelming, pristine power that the humans would finally understand their childish games were meaningless. They would send not one ship, but 3. They would not enter the asteroid belt. They would approach Mars, a clear, open space. They would perform a flawless display of synchronized energy projection, slicing a small moonlet into dust with perfect, silent beams. A reminder of the power that waited patiently at their edge of the system. A lesson in true strength. The 3 ships, named Harmony, Clarity, and Resolution, began their move. It was broadcast on an open channel to Earth. A silent announcement. In Myra's center, the alert came. She saw the 3 brilliant signatures moving in. She understood the message immediately. They were bringing a symphony to answer humanity's noisy jazz. She opened a channel to the vigil. Captain Sumin. They're coming to put on a show, to remind us of the difference between their power and our tricks. Sumin's voice was calm. What are our orders? Mira looked at the symbols of the 3 mighty ships. She thought of June, alone on the station. She thought of the quiet, stubborn will of the world below her. We don't interrupt the show, Mira said, a new idea forming. We just change the lighting, let them perform. But make sure the audience sees something they weren't expecting. She began to type new commands. This would not be a fight in the asteroid belt. This would be a different kind of test. Not of strength, but of perception. The Concordance wanted to show their perfect power. Humanity would show them something they could not comprehend. A united, unbroken will, staring back from the dark. The 3 Concordance ships, Harmony, Clarity, and Resolution, moved like dancers. In the empty space near Mars, they formed a perfect triangle. Below them, the rusty surface of the planet bore silent witness. Across Earth and on the Vigil, every screen showed the live feed. It was a performance, and humanity had a front-row seat. On the Concordance station, June was escorted to the observation deck by a silent guard. Ambassador Clarn was already there, watching the main display with serene satisfaction. Observe, Clarn said, not looking at June. This is the nature of true power. Not hidden tricks in asteroids. Not bluffs. It is clean, controlled, and absolute. It is the final argument against chaos. June said nothing. He watched the 3 beautiful ships. He felt a cold knot in his stomach. This was different from the Judicator's clumsy enforcement. This was a statement. The ships began. From each, a beam of pure, white light lanced out. They met at a single point in space where a small, barren moonlet drifted. There was no sound. No explosión. The rock simply began to vaporize, turning from solid matter to fine, expanding dust in a display of breathtaking, terrible precision. It was a demonstration of power so great it could erase things without a fuss. The message was clear: your defenses are rock. We turn rock to dust. On the vigil, Captain Sumin watched the moonlet disappear. Her crew was silent. The display was meant to fill them with despair. It did not. It filled them with a cold, quiet anger. Signal from command, her communications officer said. It's Director Mira. Myra's face appeared. She looked tired, but her eyes were focused. Captain, they've made their point. Now we make ours. Activate the lens. Sumin nodded. Activating the lens. Deep within the asteroid belt, far from the three Concordance ships, a different kind of machine powered up. It was not a weapon. It was a communications array, the largest humanity had ever built. But Myra's team had given it a new purpose. It was a mirror. A galactic-scale mirror that, as the last of the moonlet drifted away as glittering powder, the three Concordance ships held their formation, awaiting the psychological impact on the human audience. What happened next was not an attack. It was a broadcast. The giant array in the asteroid belt focused its power. It did not send a signal to the Concordance ships. Instead, it did something brilliantly simple. It hijacked the very open frequency the Concordance was using for their demonstration. It grabbed their clean, powerful signal and wrapped it in a new one. On every screen watching the three ships, the image flickered. For a second, the perfect triangle of vessels was still there. Then, like a ghost image appearing over a photograph, new pictures began to play. They showed human faces, not leaders or soldiers. A woman in a factory, welding a hull plate. A child in a classroom drawing a picture of the stars. A team of engineers on the moon, cheering as a module connected. They showed the Vigil's crew sharing a meal. They showed farmers on Earth looking up at the sky. And with the images came sounds. Not music, but the noise of humanity. The roar of a stadium crowd. The quiet hum of a laboratory. The sound of rain on a city street. A baby laughing. A mournful, beautiful cello note. The chaotic, beautiful noise of a species living, loving, and working together. The three Concordance ships, symbols of silent power, were now framed by the vibrant, messy, defiant life they sought to quiet. The contrast was shocking. Their perfect formation seemed cold and dead against the rushing river of human spirit on the harmony. The captain stared at his own screen in confusion. His demonstration of power was being commented on, decorated, upstaged by a cacophony of life. He tried to cut the broadcast, but the human signal was braided into theirs with shocking technical cleverness. To shut it off, they would have to shut off their own transmission. They would have to go silent. I end the observation deck. Klarna's serenity shattered. What is this? What are they doing? June watched, his heart swelling. He understood. They are answering you, he said softly. You showed them your strength. They are showing you their reason for strength. You can turn rock to dust. But can you understand why we would stand on that rock and fight for it? The broadcast continued. It showed the global effort. Ships being built, resources shared, old enemies working side by side. It showed Myra's tired but determined face in her command center. It showed Secretary General Juan looking at a picture of his grandchildren. It was a simple, undeniable story, a world choosing to be itself. The three Concordance ships, their perfect moment ruined, hung in space. They could fire on the array in the asteroid belt, of course. But that would be an admission. It would be an act of violence against a broadcast, against pictures and sounds. It would be the giant smashing the camera, proving the camera's point. The signal from the lead ship crackled through to the station. It was not for June, but he heard it. The captain's voice, tight with a frustration no harmony gene could fully suppress. Ambassador, their defiance is systemic. It is not military. It is existential. What are our orders? We cannot shoot at their story. Klarn was silent for a long time. They looked from the screen, where the stubborn human faces still played over the image of their mighty ships, to June. The human's face was calm, But there was a light in his eyes Clarn had never seen in any member species. It was not peace. It was something hotter, deeper, and unbreakable. June spoke into the heavy silence. You offered us peace by making us quiet. We offer you peace by asking you to let us be loud. You see a dangerous chaos. We see a protected freedom. The choice is yours. You can try to extinguish the noise and spend forever fighting the echo. Or you can learn to hear the music in it. Clarn turned back to the screen. The three ships, their demonstration over, were now just empty frames around a living picture. The message from humanity was not one of matched force. It was of unmatched will. They had not built a shield against weapons. They had built a mirror for souls. And the Concordance, for the first time in its long, peaceful history, saw its own reflection and found it lacking. Recall the ships, Clarn said, the words tasting strange. Maintain the quarantine perimeter. But open a direct channel to their Secretary General Juan. It was not surrender. It was not acceptance. But it was the first crack in a perfect silent wall. It was an acknowledgement. A conversation that as the three sleek ships turned and retreated, the human broadcast slowly faded, leaving the stars empty once more. But the silence they left behind was different. It was no longer the silence of containment. It was the silence of a question hanging in the dark, asked by a young, messy, stubborn species that had just proven one thing to a galaxy that valued peace above all. They could not be made to be quiet. And that, in the end, was the only thing worth saying.